The little girl was only 6 years old, weak, injured, abandoned. She sat hunched against the rusted wall of an abandoned warehouse, clutching a small torn backpack to her chest as if it were the last piece of herself left in the world. Her pale lips trembled with the cold, bruises visible beneath the flickering yellow light that spilled from a broken overhead lamp. Outside, the storm howled, wind rattling shattered glass panes, and rain lashed against the metal siding like fists demanding to be let in. She was alone. Alone, except for the shadows and the ghosts of what had been done to her. The sudden echo of boots crunching on broken glass cut through the storm. A low, commanding voice followed, calm but firm. "Rook, heel." Out of the dark corridor stepped a tall man in a weathered military jacket, water dripping from the hem. His steel blue eyes scanned every corner with practiced precision, his stance that of a soldier who had seen too much to ever fully rest. At his side padded a massive German shepherd, its coat slick with rain, ears pricked forward, eyes sharp. The man crouched low, one hand hovering near the dog's harness. "Easy, boy." The shepherd gave a soft rumble, not aggression, alertness. His amber eyes had already locked onto the small figure shivering against the wall. The soldier followed the line of his companion's gaze, and when he saw her, his chest tightened. A child. A little girl. She looked like a ghost half faded from this world, her small fingers clinging desperately to the backpack strap. The bruises on her wrist told stories she hadn't spoken. The hollow fear in her eyes told the rest. The soldier swallowed hard. His name was Eli Turner, 45 years old, though his face looked older, carved by grief and the kind of battles that leave invisible scars. He hadn't planned to be here tonight, but fate had a way of dragging broken souls into the same storm. "Hey," he said softly, raising his empty hand so she could see. "It's okay. You're safe now." The girl flinched, pulling the backpack tighter against her chest, pressing herself into the wall until the rust creaked. Eli stayed where he was, lowering himself onto one knee. "I won't hurt you," he added. "Neither will he. His name's Rook." As if on cue, the shepherd lowered himself to his belly, crawling forward a few inches, tail low, head bowed. He gave a soft chuff, that gentle sound meant for children and the broken-hearted. The girl's grey eyes flickered toward the dog, just for a second. Her small lips parted. No words came out. "You see?" Eli whispered. "He's a good boy. You can trust him." A gust of wind rattled the warehouse doors, making the girl flinch violently. Eli's hand twitched instinctively toward her, then froze. He couldn't rush her. He'd learned that once long ago in a different country, holding a different child who hadn't made it out alive. The memory seared through him, unbidden, but he forced it back. "Not now. Sweetheart, can you tell me your name?" Her throat worked, but the sound came out as a rasp barely audible over the storm. "Anna? Anna?" he repeated softly, committing it to memory the way he used to commit coordinates. "That's a strong name." Her eyes flicked up at him just for a second, and he saw the depth of her pain. He recognized it, because he carried the same shadows. Then she whispered something else. Her voice cracked like glass, fragile and jagged. "Please, don't take me back." The words hit Eli harder than any bullet ever had. Behind him, Rook's ears twitched, his gaze sweeping the warehouse shadows, alert to dangers still unseen. Eli's instincts sharpened in an instant. If the girl didn't want to go back, then somewhere out there, someone dangerous wanted her to. The storm wailed louder, rain hammering against the warehouse roof like a war drum. The little girl's whisper lingered in the air, heavy, heartbreaking, and full of secrets that would change everything. Eli knew one thing with absolute certainty. This night wasn't about chance. It was a crossroads. And what he did next would either save the child or damn them both. The storm raged on outside, but inside the warehouse, silence pressed heavy between the three of them, the soldier, his K9, and the little girl. Her whisper still hung in the air. "Please, don't take me back." Eli Turner's jaw tightened. The words unlocked something inside him, something he had tried to bury under routine, whiskey, and the loyal companionship of Rook. But there it was again, a child's voice begging him for safety. And this time, he wasn't going to fail. He shifted slowly, careful not to startle her, and shrugged out of his jacket. The movement made Anna flinch, her wide, grey eyes darting toward the shadows as though expecting someone else to emerge from them. Eli froze, then deliberately laid the jacket on the ground between them, not touching her. "It's warm," he said softly. "If you want it." Rook padded forward, closer now, head low, tail still. The German shepherd nudged the edge of the jacket with his nose and then looked back at the girl as if to say, "It's safe. Trust him." Anna's fingers clenched tighter around the backpack. She still hadn't let go. Eli's eyes caught the faded cartoon stitched onto the strap, a little rabbit with one ear torn. It was frayed, worn, and stained, but she held it as if the whole world might disappear if she let it go. "Sweetheart," Eli tried again, his voice gentle. "Who left you here?" She pressed her lips together, shaking her head violently. No words, only fear. Eli's mind began working like it used to, back in uniform. He didn't need her to speak. He could read the clues. The bruises, the storm, the desperate grip on that backpack, the whisper about not going back. This wasn't an accident. Someone had put her here, and they might still be close. His hand went to Rook's harness. The dog immediately straightened, amber eyes cutting toward the warehouse's dark corners. His nose twitched, ears pivoting. A low growl vibrated in his chest. "Easy," Eli murmured, though his own pulse quickened. "What have you got, boy?" Rook's head turned sharply toward the far end of the warehouse, where a half-collapsed stairwell led down into the shadows. Eli's muscles coiled tight. Instinct screamed at him. They weren't alone. But Anna's eyes found him again, her small body trembling. For the first time, she let her backpack slip slightly from her chest. She whispered, so soft he almost didn't catch it. "He'll come back." Eli's heart slammed against his ribs. "Who?" Her gaze fell, her tiny voice cracked. "Uncle Mark." Rook growled again, louder this time, the sound bouncing off the rusted walls. Eli had no idea who this Uncle Mark was yet, but he didn't need details to know what the title meant in this case. Not family, not safety. Something else, something that made this child terrified of being found again. He leaned closer, his voice a steady anchor against the storm. "Anna, listen to me. He's not going to hurt you again. Not while I'm here. Not while Rook's here." For a moment, her eyes flickered with disbelief, as if she wanted to believe him, but had been disappointed too many times before. Then, slowly, trembling, she let her hand drop to Rook's fur. The shepherd stayed perfectly still, only his warm breath rising and falling against her palm. That was it. The bridge was built. "Good girl," Eli said softly, relief tightening his throat. "We're going to get you out of here." Thunder cracked overhead, rattling the corrugated roof. Eli rose, his knees creaking, and scanned the warehouse again. Too many blind corners, too many ways for someone to watch them unseen. He couldn't stay here. He crouched again, meeting her eye level. "Anna, I need to carry you. Is that okay?" Her lips trembled. She hesitated, then nodded once. He slid his arms under her carefully, moving slow as though lifting something made of glass. She weighed almost nothing, too light, malnourished. His stomach twisted with anger he forced down. Anna tensed at first, stiff as stone, but when Rook rose alongside them, pressing against her small frame, she exhaled a ragged breath and leaned into Eli's chest. He wrapped the jacket around her shoulders and whispered, "You're safe now, kiddo. I've got you." As he stood, Rook barked once, sharp, urgent. Eli whipped his head toward the stairwell. A shadow had moved. He tightened his grip on Anna instinctively, backing toward the door. Rook snarled low, every muscle taut, eyes blazing in the direction of the movement. "All right," Eli muttered under his breath. "We're not waiting around to see who that island." The warehouse doors groaned as he shoved them open. Wind and rain slapped his face, the storm swallowing them whole. Eli sprinted across the cracked concrete yard, Rook bounding at his side, Anna clinging to him with all the strength her frail arms could manage. Behind them, deep in the warehouse shadows, a man's voice shouted echoing through the storm. "Anna!" The girl buried her face against Eli's chest and sobbed. He didn't look back. The storm swallowed the night as Eli Turner shoved open the creaking door of his small cabin on the edge of town. The hinges squealed in protest, wind pushing against him as if the night itself wanted to keep them out. Rook darted in first, shaking rainwater from his thick coat, his amber eyes scanning every corner of the familiar space before settling near the fireplace. Eli carried Anna inside, cradled tight against his chest. She clung to her backpack as if it were armor. Her wet hair stuck to his jacket, her small frame trembling so hard he could feel the shivers through his ribs. The cabin smelled faintly of cedar and ash, the lingering scent of wood smoke from nights spent alone. Photographs hung sparsely on the walls, snapshots of another life. a woman with soft brown eyes smiling under a Christmas tree, a young girl holding Rook's leash with both hands, her face alight with laughter. Eli had stopped noticing those pictures months ago, but tonight, Anna's wide grey eyes flicked toward them, and her small body stiffened, as if the images stirred something fragile inside her. "It's all right," Eli murmured. He knelt, setting her gently on the worn leather couch near the fireplace. "You're safe here." Her eyes darted around the room, every shadow, every sound. The wind rattled the windows, and she flinched as if expecting someone to crash through. Rook noticed. The shepherd padded forward, lowering his massive head onto Anna's lap. His warm weight pressed against her, steady and grounding. At first, she froze, but then her small hand lifted, trembling, and brushed against his fur. The moment her fingers sank into the thick coat, a faint sigh escaped her lips. It wasn't relief, not yet, but it was the beginning of something. Eli busied himself with the stove, clattering pots just enough to break the silence without overwhelming it. "You like cocoa?" he called softly over his shoulder. She didn't answer, but he saw her glance at him, then quickly away. He took that as a yes. Minutes later, the kettle whistled. He poured steaming milk into 2 mugs, adding cocoa powder, and stirring until the rich scent filled the cabin. He crouched again, holding 1 mug out to her. "Careful, it's hot," he said. Anna's small fingers reached hesitantly, brushing his calloused hand. She cradled the mug with both hands, blowing on the surface before sipping. The warmth brought the faintest color back to her pale cheeks. Eli sipped his own and studied her carefully. The bruises, the hollow look in her eyes. The way she clutched that backpack as though her life was sewn into its seams. His chest ached. He knew pain when he saw it. Different shapes, same weight. He remembered hospital hallways. Machines beeping in sterile rooms. His daughter Emily's tiny hand gripping his finger as she whispered, "Daddy, stay." He had stayed, but staying hadn't been enough. He shook the memory off like a man shaking off frostbite. He couldn't fall into the past now, not with this child in front of him, trembling but still breathing. "Anna," he said gently, "do you want to tell me what happened?" Her eyes dropped to the mug, her lips pressed tight, silence stretched, heavy and fragile. Rook broke it with a soft chuff, nudging her knee. Anna looked down at him, fingers burying deeper into his fur. Then, after a long moment, she whispered, "Uncle Mark." Eli's jaw tightened. He kept his voice even. "He hurt you?" Her tiny nod was almost imperceptible. Anger coiled hot in his chest, but he forced it down. Anger wouldn't help her. "You're not with him now," he said firmly. "You're with me, and with Rook. No one's going to touch you here." Her grey eyes lifted, studying him, searching for cracks in his promise. He let her look, let her see the lines of grief, the exhaustion, the scars he carried, but also the steadiness, the part of him that still knew how to protect. "You, soldier?" she asked softly. The question caught him off guard. He hesitated, then nodded. "Was? Not anymore." Her fingers tightened on the backpack strap. "My mum," she said, "soldiers protect." Eli's throat burned. He cleared it roughly. "That's what they're supposed to do." Her gaze flickered, uncertain. Then she whispered, "Will you protect me?" The question hit him like shrapnel. For a moment, he couldn't speak. He thought of Emily. He thought of the nights he hadn't been able to protect his own child from the cruel, unrelenting grip of sickness, his failures, his ghosts. But looking at Anna now, trembling and small, he felt something shift inside him. "Yes," he said finally, his voice rough with conviction. "I will." Rook gave a quiet huff, as if sealing the oath. Anna blinked, her lips parting as if to speak again, but instead she set the mug aside and curled sideways on the couch. Her small body pressed against Rook's flank, the shepherd curling protectively around her. Within minutes, exhaustion claimed her. Eli sat back, watching her chest rise and fall in fragile rhythm. The storm outside raged, but inside, for the first time in a long time, there was a fragile sense of purpose. Eli knew this wasn't the end of the fight, it was only the beginning. Whoever Uncle Mark was, he wasn't going to give up easily. Eli leaned forward, resting his elbows on his knees, staring into the fire. Memories clawed at him, the laughter of his wife Claire, the smile of his daughter Emily, the silence of 2 graves. His past was heavy, almost unbearable, but now, this little girl had whispered a plea into his hands. "Please don't take me back." And Eli Turner had no intention of ever letting her down. Morning came grey and heavy, the storm having spent itself in the early hours. Puddles clung to the dirt road outside Eli Turner's cabin, reflecting a sky the color of steel. Inside, the air was warmer. The fire in the hearth had burned down to embers, but Rook still lay curled on the rug, his flank pressed against the couch where Anna slept. She stirred at the sound of a knock on the door. It was firm, but not threatening. Eli stood quickly, his instincts flaring as he reached for the pistol on the shelf near the door. He paused, forcing himself to breathe. Then he cracked the door open. On the porch stood a woman in her late 30s, wrapped in a wool coat, her hazel eyes alert but kind. She carried a leather satchel and wore the practiced calm of someone who had seen too much suffering and learned to carry it with grace. "Mr. Turner?" she asked softly. "Depends who's asking. My name's Grace Morgan. Child Protective Services." She held up her ID. "We got a call last night from a concerned contact in law enforcement. Said you found a little girl." Eli stiffened. That was quick. Grace's eyes softened. "In cases like this, we move fast." Eli stepped aside reluctantly. Grace entered, her gaze immediately finding Anna. The girl sat up slowly, her small frame shrinking against the couch cushions. Her backpack was already clutched tight against her chest, her eyes wary. Grace crouched low, lowering her satchel to the floor. Her voice gentled. "Hi there. You must be Anna." Anna didn't answer. Her eyes darted to Eli, then to Rook, who stood and placed himself between her and the stranger. Grace noticed and smiled softly. "That's a good protector you've got there," she said, addressing Rook as much as Anna. "He won't let anyone hurt you, will he?" Rook tilted his head, ears twitching, as if considering whether this woman was worthy of trust. After a long beat, he sat down, staying close to Anna. That was all the permission Anna needed. Her small hand slid into Rook's fur again, grounding herself. Grace's heart broke a little at the sight. She had seen dozens of children in bad situations, but something about this one, this bruised, trembling girl holding onto a dog as if her life depended on it, hit differently. Eli folded his arms, watching. "She's been through hell. Barely spoke a word last night, except one thing. She doesn't want to go back." Grace nodded slowly. "That tells me plenty." She reached into her satchel, pulling out a small notebook. "Mr. Turner, I'll need to ask you a few questions, but first, may I sit with Anna?" Eli hesitated, then nodded once. Grace eased herself onto the edge of the couch, careful not to crowd. "The child." "Anna," she said gently, "do you remember me? We met once before, a long time ago. I came to your house." Anna's head jerked up, eyes wide. Grace nodded slowly. "That's right. You and your sister, Lucy, isn't it?" The name landed like a stone in the quiet room. Anna clutched her backpack tighter, her lips trembling. Finally, she whispered, "Lucy's still there." Eli's stomach dropped. "Sister, so there was another child." Grace's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed calm. "Thank you, Anna. That's very brave of you to say. We'll make sure Lucy is safe too." Eli stepped forward. "You've been to her house before? You know who this Uncle Mark is?" Grace's eyes darkened. "Mark Dawson, the mother's boyfriend. He's been on our radar for neglect complaints, but nothing we could prove. Anna's mother passed a few years back, and custody fell into a grey area. Mark presented himself as guardian, too smooth, too quick with paperwork. He fooled the system. And now?" Eli pressed. "Now," Grace said firmly, "with visible injuries and Anna's testimony, we have grounds for emergency protective custody. But—" She trailed off, her gaze flicking toward the door. "But what?" "Mark is volatile. He won't let this go quietly." As if on cue, Eli's phone buzzed on the table. An unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Turner." A voice slithered through the line, sharp, cold. "You have my daughter." Eli's grip on the phone tightened. "Mark Dawson?" "You've got no right," Mark spat. "She belongs with me. If you don't bring her back, I'll have the law on you before sundown. You hear me?" Eli's voice dropped into steel. "She's not safe with you." The line went dead. Anna whimpered, burying her face against Rook's neck. The shepherd pressed closer, his body a shield. Grace exhaled slowly. "He'll move fast. He'll try to paint you as unstable. A soldier with trauma, taking a child that isn't his. He'll spin it however he can." Eli's eyes burned with fury. "Then we fight." Grace looked at him for a long moment, measuring. She saw the exhaustion in his face, the shadows of old grief, but she also saw the resolve. "I'll file the emergency order today," she said, "but we'll need legal backing. Someone who can stand up to Mark's attorney in court. Do you know someone?" She nodded. "Sarah Coleman, family attorney, fierce when it comes to kids in danger." "I'll call her." Eli glanced at Anna, who still trembled against Rook. His chest tightened. He thought of Emily, his own daughter, lost to sickness. He hadn't been able to protect her. But Anna? He would not fail her. The crackle of the fire filled the silence. Outside, the storm clouds began to break, thin streaks of pale sunlight pushing through. But inside, tension coiled tighter, heavier than the storm ever had. Eli Turner knew one thing with certainty: the battle had only just begun. 3 days later, the winter storm had given way to brittle sunshine, but the tension in Portland's courthouse was heavier than any snow. Eli Turner stood on the courthouse steps, his breath curling into the cold morning air. At his side, Rook sat pressed against his leg, the shepherd's amber eyes scanning the bustling crowd as though sensing the weight of the day. Inside, the courthouse buzzed with low voices and the faint hum of radiators fighting against the chill. The polished wood smelled faintly of varnish and old paper. To Eli, it was too familiar. He remembered other hearings, military boards, discharge reviews, inquiries into battles long past. Back then, it had been his own future at stake. Today, it was a child's life. Grace Morgan met him at the entrance, her wool coat draped neatly over her arm, her hazel eyes steady. "You ready?" Eli gave a terse nod. "Doesn't matter if I am." He glanced at Anna, who sat close beside Rook, her small hand tangled in the shepherd's fur. "She doesn't have anyone else." Grace's lips tightened into a line of resolve. "Then we make sure she's heard." Beside her stood another woman Eli hadn't met before. Sharp auburn bob, green eyes framed by square glasses, a fitted charcoal blazer that radiated composure. She extended a firm hand. "Sarah Coleman," she said. "Family law." Eli shook it, his grip strong. Sarah studied him, noting the hard lines of his face, the grief etched in every crease, the dog who refused to leave his side. "Grace tells me you're the kind of man who doesn't back down." "Not when it comes to her," Eli said simply, glancing at Anna. Sarah's mouth quirked into the faintest smile. "Good, because Mark Dawson's attorney is Daniel Price. He's been doing this for 30 years, and he doesn't play clean. He'll try to tear you apart, paint you as unstable, claim you manipulated Anna." Eli's jaw tightened. Let him try. They entered the courtroom. Benches lined the walls, their dark wood gleaming under brass-light fixtures. At the front, the judge's bench stood elevated, the state seal gleaming above. On the petitioner's side sat Mark Dawson. His navy suit was pressed, but it couldn't hide the angry flush creeping up his neck. His jaw clenched and unclenched, his cold eyes locking immediately on Eli. Beside him, Daniel Price adjusted his tie, a thin man with sharp cheekbones and silver hair, his pale blue eyes calculating. Anna shrank back at the sight of Mark. She buried her face into Rook's fur. The shepherd leaned against her firmly, his presence a living wall between her and the man she feared. Eli felt her tremble. He placed a steady hand on her shoulder. "I've got you," he murmured. The bailiff called, "All rise for Judge Rebecca Moore." Judge Moore entered with calm authority, her black robe trailing as she took her seat. She was in her 40s, sharp brown eyes, missing nothing. "Court is now in session," she said. "We are here to address the emergency motion filed by Mr. Mark Dawson regarding custody of minor Anna Carter." Daniel Price rose smoothly, buttoning his jacket. "Your Honor, my client has suffered a grave violation. He has raised Anna since her mother's passing, provided food and shelter, and now this man, this ex-soldier, has taken it upon himself to unlawfully remove her. We have reason to believe the so-called injuries presented are self-inflicted or exaggerated for attention. Children her age are prone to dramatics." Eli's fists curled on the table, but Sarah touched his arm lightly under the table, steadying him. When it was her turn, Sarah stood, her tone cool but edged with fire. "Your Honor, what we have here is not a custody dispute. What we have is abuse. We have photographic evidence, CPS reports, and testimony from caseworker Grace Morgan, documenting consistent bruising, signs of malnutrition, and emotional trauma. Returning Anna to Mr. Dawson would cause irreparable harm," Daniel scoffed, "or so the soldier claims." Judge Moore shot him a sharp look. "Counselor, maintain professionalism." Grace was called to the stand. She spoke clearly, her hazel eyes calm but fierce. She described Anna's state when found her injuries, her fear, the words she had whispered about not wanting to go back. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had seen this pattern too many times before. Finally, the bailiff called, "Anna Carter." The courtroom hushed. Anna walked slowly to the witness stand, clutching her backpack with both hands. Her blonde hair was brushed, but uneven. She climbed into the chair, looking impossibly small beneath the high ceiling. Rook moved forward, settling on the floor near the stand. Judge Moore allowed it, recognizing the dog's calming presence. Sarah crouched beside Anna, her voice soft. "Anna, do you feel safe with Mr. Dawson?" Anna's grey eyes filled with tears. She shook her head. "Can you tell the court why?" Sarah prompted gently. Silence stretched. The storm outside rattled the old windows. Then Anna whispered, each word heavy as stone. "He locks me in the basement. He says, I'm broken." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Eli's chest constricted. Grace's eyes burned. Even Judge Moore's expression softened for the briefest second. Mark shot to his feet, his face red. "She's lying. I never—" "Sit down, Mr. Dawson," Judge Moore commanded sharply. "One more outburst and you will be held in contempt." Anna's hand slid down to rest on Rook's head. The shepherd leaned into her, solid and steady. Sarah rose, her voice steady. "Your Honor, we request that Anna remain under Eli Turner's care while CPS continues its investigation. To send her back would be to endanger her life." Judge Moore looked down at the trembling girl, the photographs, the reports. She exhaled slowly. "The court grants temporary guardianship of Anna Carter to Mr. Turner for 90 days. CPS will conduct weekly monitoring. A follow-up hearing will be scheduled." Relief crashed over Eli like a tide. Anna leaned into Rook, clutching his fur, a small sob escaping her lips, but it was a sob of release, not fear. Yet, as Eli glanced toward Mark, he saw the man's expression twist not into defeat, but into something darker. His cold eyes locked on Eli with venom. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The first snowmelt of March had begun to carve thin rivers down Portland's cracked sidewalks, but inside Eli Turner's cabin, the air was heavy with unease. The victory in court should have brought relief. For 90 days, Anna was safe. Yet Eli knew men like Mark Dawson. They didn't fade quietly. They circled, waiting for weakness. Rook paced the living room, restless, ears flicking at every sound. Outside, Anna sat cross-legged on the rug with colored pencils. Grace had brought her, sketching shaky outlines of houses, trees, and dogs. The drawings were crooked, uneven, but hopeful. Still, Eli noticed something. Every house she drew had no windows. He crouched beside her. "Why no windows, kiddo?" Anna shrugged, not looking up. "So he can't see me." The words lodged like a knife in Eli's chest. He brushed a hand over her hair gently, saying nothing. That evening, Sarah Coleman arrived, her auburn bob gleaming in the firelight. She spread a folder across Eli's table, pages filled with numbers, deposits, and forms. "Grace flagged something odd in Dawson's financials," she said. "So I pulled public records and dug deeper. Eli, he's been receiving monthly payments from a non-profit Riverside Care Foundation." Eli frowned. "What's that?" "A charity. They provide financial assistance to guardians of terminally ill children." Eli's eyes snapped to Anna. She was humming softly to Rook, oblivious for now. He looked back at Sarah, his jaw tight. "Terminally ill?" Sarah nodded grimly. "He's been filing reports that Anna is sick. Leukemia." The words hit like a thunderclap. For a moment, Eli couldn't breathe. Emily's face flashed in his mind, his real daughter, pale and weak in her hospital bed, fighting until her last breath. That son of a... His voice cracked with fury. Sarah slid a document across the table. Forged medical forms. Falsified signatures from a local clinic. He staged photos too. Grace says he'd bruise her intentionally, let her go hungry, so she'd look ill. Then he sent those images with his applications. Eli's hand curled into a fist. The room spun with rage, memory, grief. Emily had really been sick. Anna never was. And yet she had suffered the same agony, all for money. He turned her into a paycheck, Eli said hoarsely. Sarah's green eyes burned with shared anger. "If we prove this, he's finished. Fraud. Child abuse. He won't get near her again." Eli's phone buzzed suddenly on the counter. Unknown number again. He nearly ignored it, but something made him answer. A man's voice, low and sharp. "You think you've won, soldier? You think the courts will protect her. You don't know who you're dealing with. Eli's blood went cold. Mark, you give her back, or the next time you find me won't be in a courtroom. The line cut. Eli stood frozen, the silence in the room pressing in. Anna had gone still, her small grey eyes wide. She hadn't heard the words, but she knew the tone. Fear seeped into her bones like it had 100 times before. Rook growled deep, the sound rumbling through the floorboards. Sarah spoke, her voice low and urgent. He's desperate now. That makes him dangerous. Grace, who had come in behind her, nodded. I'll request a police detail for the next week, but Eli, keep your guard up. That night, sleep refused to come. Eli sat in the dark living room, Rook pressed against his leg, watching the girl sleep on the couch. Her tiny chest rose and fell beneath the blanket, her hand still clutching the backpack like a lifeline. He thought of Emily again, his real daughter. He thought of the nights he sat awake beside her hospital bed, her small hand curled into his, whispering, "Daddy, stay." He had failed once. He would not fail again. A creak outside snapped him back. Rook's head shot up, ears pricked, a snarl already vibrating in his throat. Eli grabbed the pistol from the side table and moved silently to the window. Outside, through the silver wash of moonlight, footprints trailed in the fresh snow around the cabin. Too many. Someone had been circling. Eli's heart hammered. He turned back toward Anna, who stirred in her sleep. He whispered fiercely to Rook, "Guard her." The shepherd padded instantly to her side, positioning himself between her and the window. Eli's finger hovered over his phone. He could call Grace, call the police, but his gut told him Mark wouldn't wait for paperwork. The war wasn't just in the courtroom anymore. It had arrived at his doorstep. The cabin was silent except for the low growl in Rook's chest. His amber eyes glowed in the faint firelight, fixed on the window where fresh footprints marred the snow outside. Eli's grip tightened on the pistol. His breath came slow, steady the way it had during combat patrols overseas. Only this wasn't a battlefield. It was his home. And the life of a little girl sleeping in the next room was at stake. A board creaked outside, then another. Rook bristled, tail stiff, his entire body trembling with restrained fury. Eli leaned down, whispering, "Guard her, boy, no matter what happens." Rook's ears flicked. He padded back to the couch where Anna stirred, her hand still clutching the faded backpack. The shepherd planted himself between her and the door, muscles coiled tight. The next sound was sharp, glass shattering. Eli spun, weapon raised, as the back window exploded inward. A heavy boot crunched on the wooden floor. Mark Dawson. His face was twisted with rage, eyes bloodshot, jaw clenched. He held a crowbar, its edge gleaming in the moonlight. "You think you can steal her from me?" he hissed. "She's mine. She's worth more than you'll ever understand." Eli stepped forward, steel in his voice. "She's not your paycheck. She's a child." Mark sneered. "Don't play hero, soldier. You've already lost one daughter. You want to lose another?" The words cut deep. Emily's pale face flashed in Eli's mind, her small hand slipping from his as machines beeped their final tones. Rage flared, but he forced it down. This wasn't about him. Anna woke with a scream. "No, don't let him take me!" Rook exploded into action. His bark thundered through the cabin as he lunged, slamming into Mark's arm. The crowbar clattered to the floor. Mark cursed, grappling with the dog, his face twisted with fury as Rook's teeth clamped dangerously close to his wrist. Eli surged forward, kicking the weapon across the room. He leveled the pistol. "Don't move." But Mark was desperate, wild. He shoved Rook aside with brutal force. The shepherd yelped but rebounded instantly, teeth bared. Anna sobbed, frozen against the couch. Eli shifted his stance, gun trained steady. "It's over, Dawson. Step away." Mark's chest heaved. "She's mine. She'll always be mine." Then, with a sudden lunge, he bolted toward Anna. Eli fired just once. The bullet tore into the wall, splintering wood inches from Mark's head, enough to stop him cold. Rook lunged again, this time slamming Mark to the ground. The shepherd's weight pinned him, jaws locked around his sleeve, growl vibrating through the floorboards. Eli kicked the crowbar out of reach and pressed his boot into Mark's chest, weapon steady. "You're done. Hear me? Done." Blue and red lights flashed outside. The distant wail of sirens grew louder. Grace Morgan's voice shouted from the porch, "Police! Portland PD!" Within seconds, officers flooded the cabin. They wrestled Mark's arms behind his back, snapping cuffs on his wrists as he spat curses. "You'll regret this, Turner." Mark roared as they dragged him out into the snow. "You think you can keep her? You'll never win." Anna clung to Rook, sobbing into his thick fur. The shepherd licked her cheek, whimpering softly, his tail thumping as though reassuring her. "It's over. You're safe." Eli lowered his pistol slowly, his hands shaking for the first time all night. Grace placed a steady hand on his arm. "You saved her." He shook his head, voice rough. "Number Rook did." The shepherd pressed closer to Anna, his amber eyes soft now, the fury drained. He had stood between her and terror, and in that moment, Eli realized something. Rook hadn't just saved Anna, he'd saved him too from drowning in grief, from failing again. The sirens faded into the night, taking Mark Dawson with them. The cabin smelled of gunpowder and fear, but also something else, survival. Eli dropped to one knee beside Anna. She looked up at him, tears streaking her bruised cheeks. "You're safe now," he whispered, her voice cracked, barely audible. "You promise?" He reached out, brushing her tangled hair back gently. "With my life." Rook nosed her backpack gently, as if sealing the vow. For the first time, Anna believed it. Spring crept slowly across Maine. The lake thawed, the trees budded pale green, and the sharp bite of winter softened into something gentler. Months had passed since that night at the cabin when Mark Dawson had been dragged away in handcuffs. The court hearings after had been long, grueling. Fraud, abuse, forged documents, every dark secret laid bare under the cold lights of the courtroom. Each time, Anna had clutched Rook's fur as if he were the only solid thing in the world, and each time, Eli had stood beside her, steady as stone, refusing to let her face it alone. Now, at last, the storm had broken. The courthouse in Cumberland County felt different this time. No tension, no fear, just a hum of anticipation. Judge Rebecca Moore adjusted her glasses, her voice firm but warm. After reviewing the testimony, the findings of Child Protective Services, and the petition submitted by Mr. Turner, this court approves the adoption of Anna Carter. Effective immediately, she shall be known as Anna Turner. The gavel struck wood. For a moment, Anna just sat there, her wide grey eyes searching Eli's face as if to be sure she'd heard right. He crouched beside her, his steel blue eyes softer than she'd ever seen them. "It means you're mine now, kiddo," he said gently. "No more basements, no more fear, just home." Rook nudged her hand, tail thumping. Anna's lips trembled, then broke into the first true smile Eli had ever seen on her face. She whispered, "We're a family?" Eli's throat tightened. He pulled her into his arms, holding her close, his voice rough. "Yeah, we're a family." Back at the cabin by Sebago Lake, the world looked new. Eli had rebuilt the place with his own hands, fresh timber beams, shelves filled with Anna's drawings, a porch that faced the water where sunlight rippled in gold. That evening, they sat together on the porch steps. Anna wore a pale yellow dress Sarah had gifted her. She clutched the same old backpack, though now it was patched carefully with bright cloth Eli had sewn himself. She leaned against Rook, who sprawled across the porch, his thick coat warm under her small hands. Eli grilled chicken over the fire pit. The smell mingled with pine sap and lake air. For once, he didn't feel the weight of ghosts pressing on him. The memories of Claire and Emily were still there, always would be, but they no longer crushed him. They had guided him here, to this second chance. Anna glanced up from her sketchbook. "Can we hang this one in the living room?" She held up a drawing, a house with windows this time. Light streamed from them, and beside it stood a tall man, a little girl, and a big black and tan dog. Eli swallowed hard. He brushed his thumb across the smudge of blue paint on her cheek. "Every single one of them goes up." She grinned, a gap-toothed smile that lit her face. Rook barked once, as if in agreement. The sun dipped lower, painting the lake in streaks of orange and pink. Anna curled against Rook, her eyes fluttering. Eli watched her, his chest full in a way it hadn't been in years. He thought of the night he'd found her in that warehouse, broken and silent. He thought of the promise he'd made, "With my life," and he realized she had saved him, too. He whispered softly as if to the wind, "Sometimes the ones we save are the ones who save us." Later that night, after Anna had fallen asleep and Rook snored softly at her feet, Eli stood on the porch alone. The stars glittered sharp in the black sky, their light mirrored on the still surface of the lake. He lifted his gaze upward. "Claire, Emily," his voice was rough but steady. "I couldn't save you, but I'll protect her, I swear it." The wind stirred through the trees, gentle and warm, as if answering. Behind him, Anna stirred in her sleep, murmuring something softly. Her hand reached out for Rook, who shifted closer, ever her guardian. Eli smiled faintly. He closed the door, leaving the night outside, and stepped into the warmth of home. For the first time in years, he believed in tomorrow.